The glass of grape juice shot straight toward my white dress, splashing against the fabric in a burst of dark purple that spread like a mark of humiliation for everyone to see. Skylar Dree, my 8-year-old granddaughter, stood there grinning devilishly, her little fingers still wrapped around the empty glass. For 2 long seconds, silence filled the room. Then laughter erupted like a thunderclap. "Skylar, you're awful!" My daughter-in-law, Tanisha Hayes Dupree, squealed between giggles, though not a single trace of scolding hid in her tone. Instead, there was pride in what her child had done. My son Marcus tried to suppress his laughter by covering his mouth, but the sparkle in his eyes betrayed him. The other guests leaned toward one another, whispering words they thought I couldn't hear, pointing at the purple blotch ruining my dress. "Mommy said you don't belong here," Skylar whispered, her voice coated in that false sweetness only a coached child could perfect. Her words struck harder than the juice itself, ringing in my ears like the toll of a church bell, clear, piercing, and impossible to ignore. Tanisha didn't deny it. She simply kept laughing, slicing more birthday cake as though humiliating a 64-year-old woman was just another part of the evening's entertainment. I remained in that stiff chair, feeling the sticky juice against my skin, seeping into the white fabric I had bought especially for the occasion. A dress that had cost me $150 I really couldn't spare. But I had bought it anyway. Because somewhere deep inside, I had believed this time would be different. Maybe, for once, they would treat me with the respect I had longed for. How naive I had been. How foolish to think that years of disregard and quiet cruelty could somehow change. My hands shook as I rose from the chair, but I forced my head high. I would not give them the pleasure of seeing me fall apart. Not in front of these guests. Not in front of the family who loved to turn my pain into comedy. "Grandma, aren't you going to say anything?" Skylar cooed, her childish voice dripping with venom disguised as innocence. She'd been rehearsed for this. Someone had told her exactly when and how to strike. My eyes drifted toward Tanisha, who was now serving cake, her satisfied smile confirming that everything had gone just as she'd planned. "No, sweetheart," I replied softly, my voice steady, surprisingly calm even to my own ears. "I have nothing to say." I turned and walked toward the kitchen, my dignity dragging behind me like the ruined hem of my dress. The damage was done. My outfit was destroyed, my pride crushed, and my heart shattered once again by the very people who were supposed to love me. Inside the kitchen, I grabbed a damp towel and began scrubbing at the purple stains, knowing it was useless. The laughter from the living room echoed behind me, louder now, mingling with upbeat music, as if my humiliation deserved its own soundtrack. My hands moved automatically, rubbing and wiping, while my mind drifted far away. I thought of all the years I had shown up at these family gatherings full of hope, bringing gifts no one cared for, dishes no one touched, affection no one wanted. For so long, I believed the fault was mine, that I didn't know how to connect, that maybe I was too old-fashioned, too dull for their world. But standing there, wiping at that ruined dress, I finally saw the truth I'd refused to face. They didn't want me there. They never had. I was an obligation, a box to check, a tradition to maintain. Something they tolerated because decency demanded it. The laughter grew louder from the next room, the chatter brighter. My absence had lifted the mood. They were happier now, free to enjoy themselves without the burden of my presence. Skylar was probably being praised for her little stunt, while Tanisha retold the story to the guests, each retelling more embellished than the last. I left the towel on the counter and walked quietly to the front door. No one looked up. No one asked where I was going. No one said goodbye. I took my purse, grabbed my keys, and stepped outside into the cool night. The fresh air brushed against my face, carrying away the suffocating weight of that house. As I reached my car, my hands trembled slightly while searching for the keys, but not from sadness. No, this was something else, something sharper. It was the feeling of awakening after a long, bitter sleep. When I sat behind the wheel, I caught my reflection in the rearview mirror. The woman staring back had dry eyes and an expression I hadn't seen in years. one of absolute resolve, determination. Cold, unshakable determination. This wasn't the first time my family had treated me as if I were invisible. And as I drove toward my small apartment, the memories returned, flooding my mind like water breaking through a dam. Every week for the last 5 years had followed the same painful pattern. The invitations always came at the last minute, as though I were an afterthought. "Essie, come over for Sunday dinner. Nothing special, just family," Marcus would say. But it was never nothing special. It was always the same performance, where I played the unwanted guest filling an empty seat. I always brought something homemade, a dessert that took me hours, an appetizer I'd carefully followed from a magazine recipe. Each visit cost me $30 to $50 I didn't truly have. I'd wake up before dawn to prepare it all, believing maybe they'd notice my effort. They never did. My dishes were set aside, barely touched, while others raved about someone else's store-bought entree. "Looks great, Essie," they'd say absent-mindedly, already turning away. By the end of the evening, my containers came back almost full, 1 or 2 polite servings gone. Nothing more. I remembered Marcus's birthday last year. I had spent $200 on a watch he'd mentioned once in passing. I took 2 buses downtown to buy it, came home with aching feet, but a heart brimming with anticipation. When gift time came, Marcus opened mine last, like a formality. "Thanks, Mom," he muttered, not even looking at it properly before setting it aside. Then he tore open Tanisha's present, a shirt half the price, and spent the rest of the day showing it off proudly. My watch lay forgotten among crumpled wrapping paper and used napkins. No one noticed. No one cared. To them, it was just another gift from old Essie, the woman whose love was expected but never valued. Skylar's school events were no different. Every recital, every meet, I never got an invitation. I'd overhear Marcus talking and would have to ask if I could attend. "Sure, Mom, if you want," he'd say, in that tone that told me clearly it didn't matter if I did. I'd show up with flowers bought from the grocery money. Sitting quietly in the back row while they took the best seats up front, I clapped louder than anyone when Skylar performed. My heart swelled with pride, but when the family gathered afterward for photos, Tanisha would smile that practiced smile and say, "Just parents in this one, okay?" And I'd step aside, watching them pose for picture after picture, none of which showed that Skylar even had a grandmother. Sundays at Marcus's house became endurance tests. I'd arrive exactly at noon, as manners dictated, but the food wouldn't be ready for hours. "Can I help with anything?" I'd always ask. Tanisha would wave her manicured hand. "No need, Essie, I've got it." So I'd sit in silence, watching them live their lives as if I weren't even there. By the time the meal was served, I'd get the wobbly chair by the kitchen, conveniently close enough to help if needed. Conversations flowed around me, never toward me. They spoke of places I'd never been, plans that didn't include me. "Remember that new restaurant we tried last month?" Marcus would ask, and Tanisha would launch into a story about a family outing I hadn't been invited to. I'd chew my food quietly, pretending not to care, wondering why I still showed up, and then came Christmas, the cruelest day of them all. I'd spend nearly $500 on their gifts, money saved over months of extra shifts. Each one wrapped with love, each card handwritten with care. Their gifts to me, thoughtless, rushed, sometimes wrapped in newspaper. Once, Tanisha handed me a half-used face cream she didn't like. "Maybe it'll work better for you," she'd said, and I smiled. I thanked her, because that's what I was expected to do, to be grateful, humble, and endlessly forgiving, even when all I ever received were scraps of affection. Now sitting in my car outside, by the time I reached my apartment building, my white dress still blotched with Skylar's grape juice, everything became painfully clear. What had kept me returning to those family gatherings wasn't love. It was fear. Fear of being completely alone. Fear of accepting that the very people I had sacrificed my entire life for had never truly wanted me around. But something changed in me tonight. This humiliation had felt different, because it was intentional. It wasn't casual neglect or careless disrespect this time. It was deliberate cruelty, crafted to make me feel small in front of everyone. And the worst part was that I had allowed it. I had sat there, enduring it in silence, as though this was simply what I deserved. No more. The first time Marcus asked me for money, I was 58, newly widowed, and still drowning in grief. My husband, Robert Bobby Dupree, had died suddenly of a heart attack while tending the garden one quiet April morning. He left me with a modest life insurance policy and a hollow loneliness I believed my children would help fill. How wrong I had been. Just 3 weeks after the funeral, Marcus came to my house, eyes red, voice trembling with desperation. "Mom, I need $5,000. It's temporary. I swear I'll pay you back in 2 months." He looked so fragile, so sincere that I couldn't refuse. The money came from Robert's insurance, funds I had intended for home repairs, for the leaky roof and broken windows. Those 2 months stretched into 6, then 12. When I finally gathered the courage to ask about the loan, Marcus exploded. "Are you seriously asking me about money right after losing Dad? I thought you wanted to help your family." The guilt hit me like a wave. Maybe he was right. Maybe a good mother shouldn't care about money when her son was struggling. So I stayed quiet. That was only the beginning. Over the next few years, the emergencies kept coming. $3,000 for a credit card bill, $2,000 for an apartment deposit, $100 for car repairs. Each time he promised repayment, and each time I waited in vain. But it wasn't the money that broke me. It was how they acted afterward, as though my help was expected, not appreciated. As though my sacrifice was simply my duty. Then came the day Tanisha asked me to co-sign for their first house. She was 23, bright-eyed, and lacking any real credit history. "Essie, we just need your signature. It's only a formality. You won't have to pay anything," she said, her voice sugar-sweet. They took me to the bank, and I dressed in my best suit, the same one I had worn to Robert's funeral. The loan officer explained the paperwork, but half his words went over my head. Marcus and Tanisha reassured me. "It's routine, Mom. Everyone does this for their kids." So I signed. I signed because I wanted to feel included. Because I wanted to believe they saw me as more than a wallet. That maybe this would make them appreciate me. That maybe Skylar would remember her grandmother as someone who helped make her childhood home possible. And for a while, everything seemed fine. Marcus held a steady job at a construction firm. Tanisha worked part-time, and the payments were made like clockwork. I felt proud. For once, I had done something that truly mattered for my family. Then Marcus lost his job. The company folded during an economic downturn, and just like that, the bills began piling up. I didn't even hear it from them. The bank called me directly. "Miss Dupree," the man said coldly over the phone, "the property you co-signed for on Elmwood Avenue is 3 months delinquent. If the payments aren't made, foreclosure proceedings will begin." The words felt like a hammer to my chest. When I confronted Marcus, he shouted for the first time in his life. "It's not my fault. Do you think I wanted this? You're acting like I'm some kind of criminal." Tanisha stood behind him, Skylar in her arms, staring at me as if I were to blame for their troubles. That night, I went home and counted every dollar left in my savings. If I covered the overdue payments, I'd have barely $1,000 to my name. But if I didn't, they'd lose the house, and my credit would be destroyed. I didn't have a real choice, so I paid the $8,000 they owed, emptying my emergency funds completely. Marcus muttered a quiet, "Thanks," without meeting my eyes. Tanisha didn't even bother. Their attitude made it clear. They believed it was my responsibility all along, and the truth was, legally, they weren't entirely wrong. Months of torment followed. The bank called constantly, every time they missed a payment. "Reminder of your obligation," the agents would say in their cold, detached voices. I had to take a second job, cleaning offices at night, just to cover their missed installments. I'd come home after 11, my back aching, my hands raw from chemicals, all to keep a roof over their heads. And yet, in that very house, I was treated as an outsider. I never had a key, never once heard the words, "This is your home too." They never acknowledged that without me, they'd be renting a cramped apartment somewhere, not living in the place I'd saved for. Things got worse when they decided to remodel the kitchen. "It's an investment," Marcus said when he asked for another $4,000. "It'll increase the property value." But I knew the truth. It was about luxury, not necessity. They wanted new cabinets, fancy countertops, the kind of kitchen Tanisha had seen in a magazine. I was trapped, emotionally. Financially, completely. So I said yes, for 6 months. I worked double shifts to save that money. My feet swelled until I had to sleep with them propped up. I developed chronic back pain that still haunts me. All that, for cabinets I would never use, in a kitchen where I was never welcome. The unveiling of that new kitchen turned into a full-blown party for 30 guests. I wasn't invited. I only found out when I saw the photos on Facebook. Everyone raising their glasses, smiling beside the brand new counters I had paid for. In one picture, Tanisha stood proudly beside the granite island, wine in hand, glowing with satisfaction. That night, I called Marcus. Why wasn't I invited? I asked quietly. His answer was immediate, rehearsed. Oh, we figured you don't like crowds, Mom. A lie, and we both knew it. They just didn't want me there. My presence would have spoiled their story. After all, how could they brag about their new kitchen with the woman who funded it standing in the room? That was the moment the truth began to take shape in my mind. My family wasn't loving me. They were using me. And yet, even with all the proof right in front of me, I found ways to excuse them. They're still young, I told myself. They'll understand one day. They'll thank me someday, how blind I had been, how desperate for love that I confused being needed with being wanted. But the breaking point, the moment I could never come back from, came when Skylar turned 7. I'd planned her birthday gift for months, saving every spare dollar. She adored horses, so I spent $300 on a stunning dollhouse, complete with tiny stables, miniature horses of every color, and real leather saddles. The night before her birthday, I stayed up until 2 in the morning, carefully wrapping each little piece in gold paper tied with pink ribbons that matched Tanisha's planned decor. I could hardly wait to see Skylar's face. But the second I walked through the door, I knew something was wrong. Tanisha greeted me with a strained smile. Marcus avoided my eyes entirely. "Essie, glad you could make it," Tanisha said in that sugary voice that always hid something sharp. "Just set the gifts over there." She pointed toward a small table in the corner, far from the main pile where everyone else's gifts were stacked high. My presents were being set apart, literally and symbolically. The party was packed with children and their parents, people I didn't recognize, but who fit perfectly into Marcus and Tanisha's polished little world. I sat in the back, unnoticed, while they mingled and laughed as if I weren't even there. When the time came to open presents, Skylar started with the main pile, a shiny new bicycle, a video game from her aunt, a designer doll from her parents. Each gift brought squeals of excitement and warm embraces, and my gifts, they were left for last, opened with far less enthusiasm, almost as if it were a chore. That afternoon, she started unwrapping the small gifts I had spent hours wrapping with care and love. From the moment she tore open the first one, I could tell her enthusiasm wasn't real. It was all an act, forced politeness that barely masked her disinterest. Around us, the other children were growing restless, their excitement fading, while some parents were already distracted by their phones. "How pretty, Grandma," Skylar said after opening each package. Her voice was cheerful, but it rang hollow, rehearsed, as if she had memorized those words for the occasion. There was none of that bright-eyed wonder she'd shown for the other gifts, no real laughter or excitement, just empty courtesy wrapped in polite smiles. What hurt most was realizing she didn't even understand what the gift truly was. To her, each tiny box was its own separate present, not part of a grand dollhouse set I had imagined she would cherish. The dream of her delightfully assembling the equestrian dollhouse I had envisioned turned into a pile of meaningless parts scattered across the table. "Can I go play with my new bike now?" she asked before even opening the last piece. Tanisha quickly nodded, and within seconds, Skylar and the other kids dashed out to the backyard. My gifts remained on the table, ignored, surrounded by torn wrapping paper and ribbons like discarded clutter waiting to be cleared away. I just sat there, staring at the fragments of what I thought would be a perfect moment. 300 gone. But it wasn't the wasted money that stung. It was the hollow truth. Nothing I ever did would truly matter to this family. Marcus walked over as I quietly gathered the dollhouse pieces. "Mom, you really didn't have to spend so much," he said, his tone dripping with condescension. "Skylar already has plenty of toys. Next time, just give us cash. It's more practical." His words hit me like a slap. After all the loans, the cosigns, the sacrifices, he reduced my love to a transaction. To him, I wasn't a mother anymore. I was just a walking ATM. That night, when I got home carrying what was left of Skylar's abandoned dollhouse, I sat alone in my kitchen and cried, for the first time in months. Not for the money, not even for the rejection, but because I finally saw things clearly. I wasn't their cherished grandmother. I was only useful when I opened my wallet. In the months that followed, their demands only grew bolder. Marcus needed money for air conditioning repairs. Tanisha asked me to pay for Skylar's piano lessons. Then came requests for new school clothes for the expensive private academy they'd chosen, one I was already helping to fund. Each demand came with the same tone, as if it were my duty, my obligation. Never as a favor, never as something to be repaid. The breaking point came when Tanisha called, her voice sweet and manipulative as ever. "Skylar's never been to the beach," she said. "All her friends are going with their families this summer. We don't want her to feel left out. The trip cost $2,500, money I didn't have unless I drained my emergency savings completely. But the thought of Skylar feeling excluded twisted my heart. What kind of grandmother lets her granddaughter miss out because of money? So I paid. I worked overtime, long nights cleaning offices, my knees aching, just to make sure they could go. Meanwhile, my family spent a luxurious week in the Bahamas, posting photos of sunsets, seafood dinners, and ocean views. Was I invited? Of course not. When they returned, tanned and refreshed, Marcus said casually, "We didn't think you'd enjoy it, Mom. You're not really a beach person." That was it, the final crack. Seeing their smiling faces in photos I had paid for but wasn't part of, something inside me finally snapped. What I had mistaken for love all these years wasn't love at all. It was dependence, my desperate need to be needed, no matter how they treated me. And after the humiliation of that night, Skylar splashing grape juice on me in front of strangers while everyone laughed, I knew the truth. Things would never change. They would never value me, never respect me. So the next morning, I woke with a calm I hadn't felt in years. No tears, no second guessing, just certainty. I knew what I had to do. Over breakfast, I went through the files in my safety deposit box, loan contracts, bank receipts, cosigner documents, all the proof of how I had carried this family for years. When I added it up, the total came to more than $43,000. At 9 a.m. sharp, I made my first call. "Good morning, Attorney Jenkins. This is Estelle Dree. I need your help with an urgent family matter. I want to withdraw my name as cosigner from my son's mortgage. Silas Jenkins." The same lawyer who had managed my late husband Robert's will was an old friend, sharp-minded despite his age. There was a pause. He knew my struggles well. "Estelle, are you sure about this? If you remove your co-signature, the bank might demand full payment or even foreclose." "Yes," I said firmly. "That's exactly what I want." I explained what had happened without emotion, just the facts. He listened carefully, then said, "Come by my office at 3 this afternoon. We'll review your options." When I hung up, I felt alive, lighter than I'd felt in years. Next, I called the bank. I asked to speak with David Sterling, the loan officer who had handled Marcus and Tanisha's mortgage. "Mr. Sterling, I'd like to know the procedure for removing myself as a co-signer," I said calmly. He sounded surprised. After all, I was the one who always called to fix payment issues. "Miss Dree, is there a problem? The account is current." "No," I replied. "No problem. I'm just exploring my legal rights." He explained the process. Marcus and Tanisha would need to requalify for the loan or find another co-signer. Otherwise, the bank could demand immediate repayment. "What's the current balance?" I asked, though I already had an idea. $137,000, he said. I asked him to email me the full statement and the documents to begin the withdrawal process. When I hung up, I made myself a cup of coffee and sat quietly, realizing what I had just done. No guilt, no fear, Just peace, a freedom I hadn't known in decades. 3 weeks later, my phone rang at 6 a.m. It was Marcus. His voice was trembling, stripped of the arrogance I was used to. "Mom, we got a letter from the bank about you withdrawing from our mortgage. This has to be a mistake, right? You wouldn't do this without telling us." I could hear Tanisha shouting in the background about lawyers and lawsuits. "It's not a mistake," I said calmly. "The letter is correct." Silence. Then a shaky breath. "Why, Mom? Is this because of what happened at the party?" "That was just a prank. Skylar's just a kid." I almost laughed. "Of course, Marcus," I said softly. "Kids will be kids. I'm fine." It was Darren Scott, a construction supervisor who had worked closely with Marcus. "Miss Dupree," he began, his tone firm yet regretful, "your son has some serious issues with honesty. I was the one who caught him stealing tools from the site and selling them online. When I confronted him about it, he threatened to accuse me of theft if I dared to speak up. The next call I made was to Patrice Washington, who revealed something even darker. She spoke of Marcus submitting fake overtime hours and then told me something that sent a chill down my spine. "Marcus used to brag about how he fooled you into co-signing for his house," she said. "He'd laugh and say you didn't really understand what you were signing. He'd claim it was easy to manipulate you because you were terrified of being alone or losing your family." Those words struck me like a punch to the gut. I realized that what I had suffered wasn't just financial fraud. It was emotional manipulation on a calculated level. Marcus had weaponized my love for him and my fear of isolation, turning me into nothing more than his personal safety net. Then I called Leonard Bell, an accountant who once managed some of the construction company's finances. "Ms. Estelle," he told me, "Marcus approached me a few months back asking me to falsify income records. He even offered me $500 to make up fake statements showing money he'd never earned. Of course, I refused, but I can't help but worry he might have found someone willing to do it." When the calls ended, I sat in my living room, papers spread across the coffee table like fragments of my broken trust. It wasn't just Marcus deceiving me. It was an entire web of lies that stretched over years. The money I'd sent for their emergencies wasn't for bad luck or layoffs. It was likely to cover up his own mistakes, his firings for theft and deceit. The next morning, I brought everything to Silas Jenkins. His eyes widened as he flipped through each document, each testimony, each piece of evidence I had gathered in less than a single day. "Estelle," he said gravely, "this is serious. Your son hasn't just defrauded past employers. He's committed fraud against you. This evidence could easily support criminal charges if you choose to pursue them." "Silas," I said softly, "I don't want to send my own son to jail. I just want everything legally recorded in case he tries to come after me for withdrawing my co-signature." He nodded understandingly. "We can prepare a sworn statement with all of this. I'd also advise informing the bank about the fake income records Marcus may have submitted." That afternoon, as I pulled into my apartment parking lot, I saw Marcus waiting for me, but this time he wasn't alone. 2 unfamiliar men stood beside him, both intimidating, both exuding hostility. My first instinct was to turn around and leave. But deep down, I knew running would only give them the reaction they wanted. "Mom," Marcus said coldly, "these are my friends, Alfred and Manny. They know business and family, and they think you should reconsider your decision about the house." His voice was different, detached, calculating. One of the men stepped closer, smiling in a way that never reached his eyes. "Ms. Estelle, your son told us about your family situation," he said smoothly. "We believe in keeping families together. Maybe we can help you resolve this misunderstanding." "There is no misunderstanding, gentlemen," I replied firmly, though my heart pounded in my chest. "This is a decision I've made after years of mistreatment by my own family." The second man laughed cruelly. "Ma'am, sometimes older people get confused about what's best for everyone. Maybe you just need someone to help you see things clearly." That's when I realized Marcus had crossed a line I never thought he would. He was willing to use intimidation, even threats, against his own mother to get what he wanted. But he didn't know that I now had weapons of my own, truth and evidence. "Marcus," I said sharply, "tell your friends to leave. Tell your wife that the threats and the vandalism end now. or everything I've found about your fraud will go straight to the authorities." His expression changed instantly. "What are you talking about?" I took out my phone and showed him a picture of one of the forged documents Brenda had uncovered. "I'm talking about this, and a lot more. Now get off my property before I call the police." For the first time in our lives, I was the one holding all the power. A week later, on a quiet Tuesday morning, the summons arrived. Marcus and Tanisha had filed a lawsuit against me, accusing me of malicious family abandonment and intentional destruction of family assets. Their attorney was Arthur Trevino, a man known for taking on family manipulation cases. When I handed the documents to Silas, he actually laughed for the first time since taking my case. "Estelle, this is exactly what we expected. By suing you, they've opened the door for us to expose everything Marcus has done. According to the lawsuit, I had abused my power as a co-signer, using emotional blackmail and revenge to ruin a young family's stability. They painted me as a bitter, confused old woman lashing out at her family out of spite. Silas, I asked, do they really think they can win this?" He smiled faintly. "They're not trying to win, Estelle. They're trying to scare you, to make you withdraw your request before trial. It's a classic intimidation tactic. But what they don't know," he spread our folders across his desk, "is that we have more than enough to counter them. Not just defend, but file a fraud and restitution claim." The following 3 weeks were exhausting. Silas gathered witnesses: Brenda Miller, Darren Scott, Patrice Washington, and Leonard Bell. He also obtained official bank statements proving I'd covered every missed payment as co-signer for 6 years, a total of $23,400. On the day of the trial, I arrived dressed in my best black suit, holding a folder packed with evidence. Across the courtroom sat Marcus and Tanisha, avoiding my gaze. Tanisha wore a conservative dress and a rehearsed look of victimhood, while Marcus looked tense and pale. The judge, Honorable Evelyn Thorne, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s, wasted no time. "Mr. Trevino," she said, "explain exactly what law Miss Dupree violated by withdrawing her co-signature from a mortgage." Marcus's lawyer fumbled. "Your Honor, we believe she used this legal right maliciously to cause emotional and financial harm to her family." Judge Thorne raised an eyebrow. "And can you cite any precedent where exercising a legal right became illegal based solely on emotion?" Her tone made it clear she wasn't impressed. When it was Silas's turn, he laid out everything. Every payment, every transfer, every unreturned loan. "Your Honor," he said calmly, "Miss Dupree isn't acting out of revenge. She's doing what any rational person would after years of emotional and financial abuse." He presented the records, $43,200, in total support over 6 years, then introduced evidence of Marcus's fraud. The courtroom shifted. Marcus's lawyer jumped to his feet. "Objection, Your Honor. This is irrelevant to the mortgage issue." Judge Thorne's eyes hardened. "Mr. Trevino, you questioned my client's motives, which makes her son's conduct entirely relevant." Overruled. Brenda Miller was the first witness. She calmly described the forged documents, Marcus's confessions about manipulating his mother, and his attempt to secure fake recommendations. "Ms. Miller," Silas asked, "did Mr. Marcus Dupree ever express any remorse?" "No, sir," she answered. "He told me just last week that his mother was difficult and didn't understand modern families. He said she was being selfish for cutting him off financially." Then Darren Scott testified about the stolen tools and the threats Marcus made. The judge's expression grew visibly colder. Patrice Washington followed, detailing the falsified hours and Marcus's cruel jokes about my so-called naivete. The judge took pages of notes. Finally, Silas called me to the stand. I had practiced for days, but when I began to speak, the words came out naturally. "Your Honor," I began, my voice steady but heavy with years of exhaustion. "For 6 long years, I have worked double shifts, emptied every bit of my savings, and mortgaged my own future just to keep alive a family that treated me as if I were invisible. I paid for vacations I wasn't invited to, for renovations I never enjoyed, for a home where I was merely tolerated, never truly welcomed. I recounted the incident at Tanisha's birthday party, The public humiliation I suffered, the cruel laughter, and the years of emotional neglect that I had quietly endured. Your Honor, I said, my voice trembling slightly. The day my own granddaughter poured grape juice over me while my family laughed. That was the day I realized something painful. It wasn't love that made me stay and keep helping them. It was fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of admitting that the people I sacrificed everything for never really wanted me. When Marcus's attorney stood to cross-examine me, his tone dripped with condescension. Miss Dupree, he said, isn't it true that this entire case stems from resentment? That you're acting out of spite after being offended at a family gathering? I met his gaze without hesitation. No, sir, I replied calmly. I am here because I've finally understood that for years I've been the victim of emotional and financial manipulation. My son and his wife built their comfortable lives on my money and my trust. And when I tried to set healthy boundaries, they resorted to threats and intimidation. I presented the photographs of my vandalized car, the written threats I had received, and described the men Marcus had sent to pressure me. Your Honor, I said, a mother who truly loves her child does not send people to frighten her when she decides to stop being used. When the testimonies concluded, the courtroom fell silent as the judge left to deliberate. 1 hour later, she returned with a verdict that would change my life. This court finds, she said firmly, that Ms. Estelle Dupree acted within her legal rights in withdrawing her co-signature from the mortgage in question. Furthermore, this court recognizes clear evidence of fraudulent and manipulative behavior by Mr. Marcus Dupree toward his mother. The courtroom gasped as the judge's decision echoed. The lawsuit against Ms. Dupree is hereby dismissed. Mr. and Mrs. Dupree are ordered to pay all legal expenses amounting to $4,500 and are prohibited from contacting or approaching Ms. Dupree for 1 full year. Then, looking directly at Marcus, the judge warned, Mr. Dupree, any future harassment or intimidation of your mother will result in criminal prosecution. Ms. Dupree has the right to live free of threats and emotional manipulation, even from her own family. When I stepped out of that courthouse, Silas greeted me with a warm smile and extended his hand. Estelle, he said, you didn't just win a legal case today, you won your freedom. And he was right. For the first time in 6 years, I felt light, unburdened, free. 2 years have passed since that day, and my life has transformed in ways I could never have imagined. I'm sitting now in a cozy coffee shop I opened with the money I once wasted keeping Marcus and Tanisha afloat. I named it Robert's Corner, after my late husband. Every morning when I unlock the door, I feel his presence beside me, proud of the woman I've finally become. The cafe is small but filled with warmth. The walls are painted soft cream, green plants fill every corner, and smooth jazz hums gently through the speakers. I serve freshly brewed coffee, homemade pastries I bake at dawn, and simple, hearty sandwiches. My regular customers, office workers, students, and elderly couples, come not just for coffee, but for peace. Brenda Miller, who bravely testified on my behalf, became my first employee. After losing her job because her boss feared backlash, I offered her a position. Miss Estelle, she said with tears in her eyes, working for you is an honor. It's rare to work for someone who values honesty. The cafe doesn't make me rich, but it sustains me. Every dollar I earn comes from hard work, not guilt or manipulation. The mornings are my favorite, arriving at 5:30, filling the air with the scent of cinnamon and fresh coffee. No phone calls demanding money, no drama, just peace. My regulars have become a family of their own. There's Mrs. Hortensia, 75, who visits twice a week for a latte and stories about her grandkids, kids who actually call to check on her. And there's Mr. Manuel, a widower my age, who joins me each morning for quiet talks about books and life. No games, no expectations, just simple human connection. On weekends, I host small community events, poetry readings, senior game afternoons, and book swaps. They've turned the cafe into a gathering place for people seeking warmth and authenticity, not obligation. The restraining order against Marcus and Tanisha expired 6 months ago, but they've made no attempt to contact me. From what I've heard, they lost the house 3 months after the trial, just as Silas predicted. The bank foreclosed, forcing them to move into a small apartment. Marcus now works for minimum wage at a landscaping company, and Tanisha found full-time work at a supermarket. Their life is harder, but finally honest. News about Skylar reaches me occasionally through Mrs. Hortensia, whose friends know other parents at Skylar's school. She's adjusted better than anyone expected. Watching her parents struggle taught her lessons about effort and responsibility, lessons comfort never could. 3 weeks ago, I saw her from my cafe window. She was walking with a friend, laughing, her school uniform slightly wrinkled, her expression softer, wiser. For a brief moment, our eyes met through the glass. She paused, recognition flickering in her gaze, followed by something else. Understanding. It wasn't the defiant look of the little girl who once threw juice on me. It was the look of someone who had learned that respect is something earned. She almost waved, then quietly walked on. I don't hold anger toward Skylar. She was a child, guided by adults who failed to teach her better. Life, it seems, has become her best teacher. Silas still visits me once a month, always ordering black coffee and a slice of lemon cake. Estelle, he said during his last visit, you're proof that justice matters. You didn't just protect yourself, you probably saved your family from far worse consequences. And I believe he's right. By forcing Marcus and Tanisha to face reality, I may have given them a second chance to live truthfully rather than through deceit. My apartment feels different now. No longer a hiding place from those who hurt me, it's my sanctuary. Every detail, every book, every plant reflects who I am. It's quiet, peaceful, and free from manipulation. On Sundays, I no longer sit through tense family dinners. I attend a small church nearby and share meals afterward with friends who know me not as Estelle the provider, but as Estelle the woman who owns a coffee shop. This morning, as I looked in the mirror behind my counter, a 66-year-old woman stared back. A few more wrinkles, yes, but eyes shining with confidence I hadn't seen in decades. I'm not rich. I don't have family gatherings or grandchildren calling to boast about their grades, but what I do have is priceless, self-respect, and peace. They say the best revenge is living well. And for the first time in my life, I truly am. As I locked the cafe that evening, ready to go home, I noticed a familiar figure standing across the street. It was Marcus, thinner now, wearing worn-out work clothes, watching my shop from a distance. He didn't step closer, nor did he try to enter. He simply stood outside for a few silent minutes, then quietly walked away. In his eyes, I caught a glimpse of something I had never seen before: respect, and perhaps even a trace of pride. For the first time, he saw his mother not as someone to manipulate, but as a woman who had built something of her own through her own effort. I was no longer the helpless figure they once controlled. I had become an independent woman, a business owner who had found her self-worth. I locked the cafe door, turned off the lights, and walked home under the soft afternoon sun. Tomorrow would bring another day of honest work, another day of living life by my own choices. And that thought filled me with peace. 6 months slipped by. On a crisp November morning, I awoke to unexpected news. My coffee shop had been chosen as the Small Business of the Month by the local Chamber of Commerce. Next week, I'd receive a recognition plaque, along with a feature in the local paper, complete with my photo and my story, how a 66-year-old woman started her very first business. The irony wasn't lost on me. For most of my life, no one in my family ever believed I could achieve anything meaningful on my own. To them, I was just the woman they could lean on whenever they ran out of money. Now, complete strangers saw me as a capable entrepreneur, someone who had added real value to the community. That morning, Brenda brought me my usual coffee with a bright smile. "Ms. Estelle," she said, "my daughter asked yesterday if you could give her some advice about starting her own bakery. She says you're her inspiration, especially for women who believe it's never too late to grow." I couldn't help but laugh. The same Marcus and Tanisha who once told me I was too old to understand the modern world would probably never believe this moment. The Chamber of Commerce. The invitation also came with a surprise. They wanted me to speak at a seminar on entrepreneurship for seniors. Apparently, my story had touched many people in their 60s and beyond. People who once thought it was too late to start anew. The coordinator told me that there's a growing demand for stories like mine, of people rediscovering purpose after 60. Over the past few months, Mr. Manuel had become more than a loyal customer. We had started going for quiet Sunday walks in the park after I closed the cafe. Just yesterday, he brought me a bunch of wildflowers he'd picked during his morning stroll. A simple gesture, but full of warmth and sincerity. It's refreshing to share time with someone who expects nothing from me, except my company. Estelle, he said gently as we shared a slice of apple pie, it's truly admirable how you built all of this after everything you went through with your family. We don't talk much about the past, but when we do, he always speaks with compassion, never pity. Recently, I decided to expand the cafe's menu to include more homemade dishes, stews, soups, and traditional meals I prepare every morning before opening. The response has been overwhelming. I'm even considering hiring another part-time cook. It's surreal to think that less than 3 years ago, I was worrying about paying my own bills. And now, I'm creating jobs for others. The weekend gatherings have evolved too. This Saturday, we're hosting our first story swap night, where customers share meaningful experiences from their lives. The idea came from Mrs. Hortensia, who once said that many older people feel invisible in a world obsessed with youth. Now, my cafe has become a space where age is seen as wisdom, not irrelevance. Yesterday, I received an unexpected letter from Darren Scott, the construction supervisor who once testified about Marcus's fraud. He wrote to tell me that Marcus had recently applied for a job at his new firm, and that he had rejected the application after reviewing his history. Ms. Estelle, the letter said, your courage in exposing the truth has saved other employers from being deceived. Your son needed to face real consequences. It's the only way he might change. His words made me pause. Had my decision really helped Marcus in the long run? After some reflection, I believe it did. For years, I'd always rescued him, teaching him, unintentionally, that he could escape the cost of his choices. But now, for the first time in his life, he was finally learning the connection between actions and outcomes. Brenda told me she'd seen him recently, working in a nearby garden. He looked tired, but focused, grounded. He seemed different, she said. More serious. Like he finally understands that honest work demands honest effort. A couple of weeks ago, while sorting through old papers, I came across a photo from that Bahamas vacation I'd once paid for. Marcus, Tanisha, and Skylar were all smiling brightly, sun-kissed and carefree, never realizing that their trip was funded by someone they hadn't even invited. For the first time, that photo didn't hurt. Instead, I felt a quiet satisfaction. That had been their last vacation paid for with unearned money. From then on, any future happiness they earned would come from their own effort. And that, I realized, was the greatest gift I could have given them, my therapist. Dr. Laura Munoz recently suggested I begin journaling this journey. Estelle, she told me, your story could help others going through financial or emotional abuse by family. Especially women your age, many feel trapped, thinking they have no choice. So, I've started writing each night after closing the cafe. Revisiting those years of manipulation isn't easy, but putting it into words feels liberating. Maybe one day, these reflections will become something more. A book or articles that help others reclaim their power. What surprises me most about this chapter of my life is how alive I feel. For so long, my energy was drained by endless family crises. Now, that same energy fuels creativity, purpose, and community. It's as if I've awakened a part of myself that was dormant for decades. Just last month, a young journalist interviewed me for a feature on women entrepreneurs. She asked if I ever regretted the decisions I made with my family. I didn't hesitate. The only regret I have, I said, is not valuing myself sooner. That line ended up as the headline quote. Since then, several women have visited the cafe just to meet me, to share their own stories of family struggles and newfound independence. It comforts me to know I'm not alone, and it's empowering to see how my story gives others courage to begin again. This morning, as I arranged the pastries for the day, I realized something. November had arrived, and I hadn't once thought about the upcoming holidays. For years, Christmas meant stress, endless expenses, unappreciated gifts, and gatherings where I felt like an outsider. But this year feels different. Brenda and I plan to decorate the cafe and serve holiday specials. Mr. Manuel mentioned he has no family plans for Christmas Eve, and Mrs. Hortensia said her children won't be visiting this year. So I'm thinking of hosting a small Christmas dinner at the cafe for people like us, who've built our own kind of family through kindness and respect. The truth is, at 66, I feel more whole and more joyful than I ever did at 20. It's a different kind of happiness, one that doesn't depend on anyone's approval or validation. It comes from within, from knowing I've built something meaningful with my own hands and finally learned to honor myself. Tomorrow will bring another day at the cafe. Another day of serving people who appreciate what I offer. Another day of living life on my own terms. And that's exactly how it should be. Did you enjoy my story? And from which city are you listening today? Tell me in the comments. I'd love to know. If you liked it, you can support my work with a super thanks. It helps me keep bringing more stories like this one. Thank you so much for your kindness and encouragement. On your screen, you'll see 2 more inspiring life stories I highly recommend. There's so much more waiting for you on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story, with love and respect.